I'm Eric Loy, and welcome to Eric Loy Interviews. On this podcast, we talk with folks from the VTuber community on their channels, their talents, their stories, where they come from, and their plans for the future. We are joined by BerryMelon. Hi.
Hello.
I appreciate you coming on the show. Please introduce yourself to everybody.
Well, hello there, dreamers. I'm BerryMelon, your mistress of dreams and nightmares, and I'm just here to have a fun time. It's really nice to meet you, Eric.
You too. Listen to that voice, folks. If that voice couldn't tell you to do whatever you wanted and you end up doing it, I don't know what voice would.
That's very complimentary. Thank you very much.
This is definitely the voice in your dreams that's going to tell you to do to tell you to do whatever.
Exactly. Between them 40 winks, you got to watch out. Sometimes, I'm good friends with the Sandman, so we keep it tight in the dream world.
So, How long have you been doing this type of streaming?
As a VTuber, as a virtual presence, I call her my presence.
Yeah.
I've been doing it since 2020, 2021.
Oh.
Before that, I've been streaming since 2015, 2016.
Yeah.
So I've got a little history here and there, and I've had different experiences. Yeah.
So you've tried a few different ways to go on and stream.
Yeah.
So what makes this the one you want to stick with?
I am an avid learner and I think a perpetual student. And I'm always looking for the way that I kind of measure things is I look for the newest technology, but with a measured understanding that there will be bugs, right? And there will be obviously situations where that technology may work, may not work, may malfunction, such and such. And I've always been very interested in learning and being able to almost translate that for other people as well. When I first started out, OBS was still in its baby steps, and obviously streaming the same. So it's been a large learning curve, to put it politely.
Yeah, but you're learning along with everybody else.
Exactly.
I mean, you're on the ground floor of the technology. There's still a lot that this can do.
Oh yeah. And now I'm getting into full body tracking, and that's a whole nother bag of ball of yarn, rather. But
yeah, once you're getting into that stuff, now you're really past my pay grade.
Yeah, it's a bit. Honestly, I will say, for listeners, that it is a bit of a money pit. Like when you first get into this particular profession and stuff like that, there is a point of entry where, yes, it's very accessible now. There's so much more accessibility. There's so many more programs that you can get into at the ground level. But I feel also that it's important to note that to advance, there are certain points that you will have to meet. Just like audio quality, video quality, internet, even just those base things can come at a cost, unfortunately. But if you can get there, then and you enjoy it, or maybe you're just streaming for friends, then it's totally worth it,
Yeah, there's so many different levels and of how people. There's some people I know, because that's how people are, who join up and think that if I go on once a week, I'm going to be able to do exactly what those folks in Japan are able to do, and I'm going to be making money, and people are going to. And those people are pretty delusional to start with. But
there's that. Yeah, realistically, I will say, to be in that 1%, and that's anywhere, be it streaming, be it VTubing.
Yeah.
You have to know people who know people, be in the right place at the right time, or go viral. And I will say all of those are fleeting, right? All of those are very temporary. Or if you do stay with it, you've always got, a lot of pressure on you.
Yeah.
And I don't think anybody really thinks about that when they first get into it. So I would say it's always good to measure with a sense of realism.
Yes. Yeah. Or as I say, delusional. But it's I don't really mean that. I mean it's folks. You come in with your expectations maybe a little bit pie in the sky when there are certainly goals that are right there that you can hit if you do put that effort into it and you do put a little bit of money into it. And people can, if people set a goals realistically that they can get to. They can have fun with it and still make a little side money, or maybe they can
Oh
do
yeah,
better. And
definitely.
the I was talking with someone about this the other day, and coming from the radio stuff, all the radio stations had audiences that were finite. We had a
Hmm.
If we were in a market of 10,000 people, maybe 7,000 of those people listen to the radio. We're probably overestimating that. Um, and we had to divide that up into a pie. Which stations get that? And we try to get the bigger part of the pie. Folks who are on the
Yeah,
internet here have a different setup. You guys' potential audience is the entire planet.
this is true.
Your pie is not a pie; it's a globe.
Yes,
and
it is.
and while and there's the way to grab an audience and the marketing of that is completely different. I think there's a lot of things you can do that are the same, which are like try to get on different platforms and the short videos and stuff that advertise to it. But it's created an entirely new field of business of marketing, and it'll be interesting for me as an old radio guy to see how that goes, and see how people are able to pick up those audiences, because it's a it's like
I
baseball and women's
I
softball. It's the same game, but not quite.
I agree, but I also disagree in some respect that it's
Mm,
new.
mm,
I think that other countries have been doing it this way for many years,
yeah.
and America is just catching up to the style of entertainment.
Hmm.
Idol culture, think K-pop, J-pop have been popular for many years and have been exported as entertainment, as cultural like cultural exports, right?
Right.
And so when you think about it that way, especially idol culture, maid cafe culture, those are the cultures that I come from. That's kind of my background.
Yeah.
And so when it comes to that effect, I think it's more so that America and a lot more European nations are a little late on the uptake,
Mm,
because Japanese and a lot of other Asian cultures have been doing animated entertainment, animated sponsorships, and kind of commercialization for I would say decades at this point.
right.
And just building it into their culture. And it's just been, I mean, back in the day when I was growing up, it was considered weird to
Mm.
be into Japanese culture and alternative cultures.
Oh
Like
yeah.
it was considered very, very taboo.
Mm.
Even to the point of like, oh, well, like you have a VHS tape. Okay, that takes you back to, of your favorite anime. Oh, that's weird. Why are you watching that kind of cartoon?
Yeah.
And so nowadays, with the fact that it's very popular, it's common culture, it's very banal at this point, that it's been a very interesting shift in our like the way that our culture thinks about it.
Mm.
And especially when it comes to sponsorships and things like that. I think yes, the platform for it has definitely changed.
Well.
I think that there's definitely aspects to it that have modernized with our modern era, the accessibility to different networks of connection, let's say the internet,
Mm.
and a lot more like leeway into the global market. But I also feel like it is an old marketing style that is just changing for the times.
Yeah. I that's a better insight than mine. I'll tell you that. I think that's exactly right. Question for you about that is, from where I'm coming from in the radio TV business, there was a lot of
Hmm.
competition between the stations for that audience. Do
Hmm.
you see that same type of competition between VTubers and streamers? Because you target we come in a radio station, you target the other station in town, and you try to take their audience away from them.
I feel like, as far as the way that I would explain it to a newbie, um, as far as it goes with like crowd and your community,
Hmm.
right? Because a lot of us, it is competition, right? If you are looking to seek being the topmost.
Hmm.
And I would say to a point, I feel like there's almost this false kind of war that VTubers are pitted against real life streamers, because it's the same public, but it's not the same, if
Right.
that makes sense.
It does. It does.
Where live streamers, cam streamers, let's say, um, they have a different appeal I think,
Mm.
in a lot of ways than a an avatar or a presence. Um, because I think a lot of the folks that watch a live streamer may also watch and partake in VTuber culture. But I feel like they're the only way that they are measured against each other is by certain societal expectations of streaming as a whole.
Mm.
But I feel like VTubing as its own platform is a little bit different. But I do feel that VTubing is going to be blending more into the streaming space as a tool than more of a novelty, which is kind of where it was when I started and
I
earlier on in its life cycle.
Yeah, I could
It was
definitely.
considered more of a novelty.
Oh yeah, it definitely was when it first came out, and I think if you took like a Venn diagram of the audiences,
Mhm.
you'd see quite a bit of overlap, but definitely some that
There
didn't.
is.
Um, and those folks on the outer edge of the circles, um, wouldn't necessarily have anything to do with it with the folks that overlap as far as
Exactly,
talent goes.
exactly.
But again, it's becoming more and more mainstream, even if in the United States it's coming along slower. Um,
Mm.
but that's the way the U.S. has been. I mean, once the United States does take in something like this, we get a tendency to be very strong in it, and then it kind of settles out and either fades away or um, becomes so irrelevant that we don't pay any attention to it anymore. Do you think that VTubing could suffer that same fate?
I I I think again, it's one of those cases where I agree on some aspects, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because the novelty is kind of gone. We're kind of in this relationship, this ongoing relationship with this style of media now. I feel like it's still going to be used as a tool, and I have a few reasons why.
Mm-hmm.
But also it will lose its shine, right? People will get bored of it. It will become, repetition very common. Obviously, the market now is very flooded.
Right.
And so you kind of have all these different personalities. You can have a moth alpaca VTuber that's just very bubbly. You can have a reptile that just does acrobats. Like you can be and do anything in a lot of these avatars now.
Right.
And I feel like there's still so much to learn, especially in the aspect of virtual reality space and virtual space. I feel like a lot of it is going to move there. That's what I'm doing right now,
Mm-hmm.
is moving more to the virtual reality space and evolving in that way. But I feel like it's going to be a tool. It's going to be kind of like if you remember Windows, like word processing, Microsoft
Oh yes.
Office, right?
Yes. Oh
And it
yes.
had that little like paperclip guy that was
Yeah.
like, "Can
God.
I
Yes.
help you?"
Yes.
Like I feel like VTubing is going to become a staple in that way, where some people will remember it very nostalgically and other people will remember it very what they call now cringe. But
Mm.
I feel like for me, it's not cringe at all. I think it's a tool in my tool belt.
Mm.
And I may evolve from this style of presentation in the future. But for now, I'm very comfortable where I am. I'm very excited to learn more about it and evolve in this space.
Yeah. And I think that's a wonderful explanation of it. And I understand where you're coming from, and it's my outlook. This is so limited, being that I'm not super techy, and my media experience is strictly in the old radio business. But I do see a lot of
Mm,
similarities in how the old disc jockeys used to work and how a lot of folks who are on the internet as VTubers are now. Because when we were doing our stuff in the '80s, we didn't show our faces. A lot of us used different names and maybe even different personalities.
mm-hmm.
We would
Mm-hmm.
play the same music as we're on the other stations, but people came back to the announcers when they were enamored of their personality, if they enjoyed being with them. It wasn't necessarily the music, and that was part of it, but it was the personality. I think you've got that a lot with a lot
Yeah,
of VTubers now, too, because you can watch somebody play Minecraft
definitely.
on 1,000 different people. But if someone likes the way you do it, they're coming back for you. And the that type of VTubing is very much personality driven the same way.
Oh yeah. I actually took a tech class on old school radio back when I was in school. So it was kind of I thought it was kind of funny when you brought that up. And I mean like as far as it is, I think too, it's like the amount of work that goes into production like that. you'll see some VTubers who have that or more higher production, and it's just insane what people can really get into with it and the technology that's there. And I think that I definitely agree. Personality driven is what is going to be the content of the future. I feel like there are going to be people that pick up the tool and don't know quite how to utilize it, right? They're going to kind of be like experimenting, but not quite figure out how it works for them.
Right.
But I've had a lot of experiences in life that have kind of created this idea of like, I need to find the tools that work for me. And it's definitely been an avenue that I've found a lot of purpose in, and I found a lot of like benefit from, obviously. And I think a big part of its proliferation as a cultural phenomenon per se is the fact that, you know, obviously we all went through the apocalypse. It wasn't the apocalypse we wanted, but it was the apocalypse we got.
Yes.
And it caused a lot of folks to kind of be dedicated to their fan base or dedicated to their phones, where they were a little more, I think the accessibility made it a lot more of a draw to watch, you know, VTubers or even just their favorite streamers.
Right.
Because it was escapism.
Right.
And I know for me, a lot of my shtick is escapism. You come in and we have a daydream together. Obviously, being the mistress of dreams and nightmares, we have this little daydream, and then, you know, we have this experience together, and then you wake up.
Yes.
And I say, like, you know, it's time to wake up.
Yes.
And then everybody, you know, they leave and they have their like breakup of the experience and the immersion, and they get to go on with their day.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's kind of the aspects that I bring to it.
Being the mistress, can I ask you about that dream where I can't find my car? Can you please give me someone that's something that's different? It's like, it's really irritating.
I feel like that's usually something to do with lack of control, I believe.
Well,
and the inability to kind of be able to sort out what you're going through. There's something in your waking life, I think, that you're missing out on, and you know, once you find your car, it's gonna be all figured out.
Well, I am married, so there is that.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
No, that's so much. Everybody's got their own thing to come back to as far as that goes. To me, it sounds like you're just a person who's very interested in these types of things, and you have a curiosity that's not easily sated. Am I right?
Yeah, I would say I'm a very curious person, and I think a lot of that stems from my youth. I was a very feral reader, I would say. And so I was very into a lot of mythology, folklore, just stories and learning. I mean, even for me, like, depending on what it is, a technology manual can be fun. So it was it was just, you know, finding those little aspects of life that were just interesting.
That's perfectly, you know, that makes the people say, "Oh, technical manual." No, but if it's something that you're interested in, it's a godsend. I mean, you learn something, even if it's an old thing. Maybe you find something that you didn't know something about. I mean, you even took a radio class, for crying out loud, and that's. I'm sure you found out that we made no money as part of it, but
no, fair. That's on par. You know, I think a lot of showmanship and things like that, the arts for sure, are very undervalued, and I feel like also going on with the idea of like having hobbies that you're interested in, I feel like a lot of the kids nowadays are missing out on boredom. And I feel like that's such a weird thing to say, right? Of being able to be so stimulated with like media and the internet and all this, just everything going on in life, and they don't have a chance to just like sit there and be bored and like take in like that energy and like understand that about themselves. And I feel like, unfortunately, unless it's taught, I feel like it's going to be a skill that is lost.
Yeah. There's a lot of things that are that way. In fact, I think that would be my VTuber, just be like a blob, just sitting there doing nothing, so people can be bored along with me. And maybe I can get some folks to go along with that. Sponsors might be tough to get, but unless it's like
no,
it's like Sominex or something like that. But I think it's very interesting that how you look at these things. I know you've got a podcast yourself, that deals with
I have it. It's actually a podcast that I'm part of with my friend who's been running it for over a decade.
yeah. So
For over a few decades, actually.
so what's the podcast
It's
about?
called Anime Jam Session,
Hmm.
and it's an anime and Japanese culture podcast that my friend DJ Ranma S has been running for a very, very long time.
Hmm.
We used to do cosplay content. We used to do convention content. We talk about anime and Japanese cultural phenomenons going on in the world and stuff like that. And so I've just been a guest host for a little while, and just really appreciate what he does.
Yeah. Well, you certainly got you got the voice and the temperament for it. I mean, really. I mean, you should be doing the interviews.
No,
Uh,
no. You
it's
give yourself too little credit.
no.
You've got a very good voice, as they say, good voice for radio, I
Thanks,
guess.
and
Is
a good
what they-
face for it
yeah.
too. The
Oh, fair.
the I kill myself with that every time.
You should
The
become a VTuber.
Yeah,
No,
well,
I'm kidding.
well,
You know.
no, I don't know if I have that much that much energy to do it that way. But the art of talking and just conversation in general is personalized, one to one outside of the internet is so gone. And in
Mm.
questioning, I think is, and maybe this is bringing it back a little bit. Because you're coming on and you're talking to someone that you may never meet on the other side of the planet, and you're trying to keep up conversations with them, and whether it's one person in your chat or 30 or 300, you're kind of forced to play host to these folks and keep it going. You think that's a good thing for people? Are people really learning how to communicate better with this?
I feel like it's a different type of communication, right? Because if you think about it really, especially for those streamers that have such big chats that they just have, it's just rotating. It's
Mhm.
just always constant messages. For me, the way I engage with my chat is I try to address messages that I see and then I address them directly. But
Mhm.
what I think really happens is people who are in a chat, I feel like some of them are just there for it's all about motivations, right? Because
Right.
some people go into the chat just for the attention from the streamer. They really love the streamer. Maybe they just want to be recognized or validated. They just want that sense of attention.
Right.
There are the other people that just go in and they lurk and they don't want to be noticed and they just want to support their streamer, their favorite streamer, their Oshi,
Yeah.
as we call it in VTubing.
Yeah.
And they just want to kind of push, which is what Oshi means. Oshi means to like push forward.
Mm.
And then, of course, you have the people that come in and troll, or you have your regulars, which are your people that, will come in and be additive to the conversation, but aren't really looking for that same validation. They're looking to be additive to the community, right?
Right.
They'll join on game nights. They'll be part of the actual physical community and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And I feel like those to me are the people I try to interact with a lot. I do not mind. I've had trolls. I've been hate raided. I've been banned from Twitch because of a hate raid. Like I've been through a lot of stuff with it. So it's
Yeesh.
one of those things where you kind of have to measure your own chat and create the community you want. So when it comes to like the trolls and stuff, I'm like immediately, they're not worth my time. I don't have to deal with them. I'm not going to try and convince them of anything. They're immediate ban, like pretty much.
Yeah.
And so because that's not the community I want to build. And I
Right.
feel like a lot of people neglect that because they feel like, especially when you're first starting out, I know this was something that I dealt with, was that when you have that one person that watches you, even if they're kind of off or like creepy, you're like, oh, but this is the one person that's watching me, right?
Right.
And I don't want to lose that because that's progress. And it's like, no, that's not progress. Like if you build your community out of that kind of personality, then obviously they're going to treat you, the way that they know how to treat you, which is uncomfortably and
Right.
creepy. And so you just kind of have to move on from that.
Oh yeah. Otherwise, they're the
From
show.
there though,
They become the
yeah,
show.
otherwise that's the show.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's very disheartening, right? Because you think that that's kind of where everything's going to go, but then you find the people that actually care and want to support you and want to see you grow as a talent, right?
Mm.
And as a community and everything like that. Like, so for me, I run my community. We have a Minecraft server, and oh my gosh, they are feral for this thing. So like we run it once a week, And I always run it. I try to run it because we run it for console and PC gamers. Obviously, there's a little bit of cross-platform.
Right.
And so we run it, and we had like 8 to 10 people last night, and it was very it was very crazy and a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But it definitely was one of those things that it's because I've cultivated the community I want to spend time with, right? And at the end of the day, I think when you're a streamer, you've kind of got to cultivate the community you want to have. And it takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of effort, but it's definitely worth it.
Absolutely. And again, it's like combing your hair. I mean, you
Mm.
got to get you have to get take the chaff from the wheat sometimes, even as a talk show host back in the day, you had one or two people who called up just because they figure that they want to be part of your thing and their shtick and whatever. And you have to make sure that you keep it yours and then treat it like it's yours. Um,
Yes.
you don't have to be necessarily, stomping on people when they come in, but be very direct and firm and don't back down.
Yeah. Nope. And that's a very important skill to learn on. I grew up, unfortunately, a bit of a people pleaser. And
Mm,
so I didn't really fully start to learn my boundaries until my late 20s.
mm,
And so it was one of those cases where you had to start learning that because people will take your kindness in a way that benefits them.
oh yeah,
And you can still be kind, right? You can still be a nice person, but you definitely need to know who you are, know your identity and yourself and how you want to represent yourself and enforce those boundaries.
yeah,
Because unfortunately, the world is just that way.
yeah,
And as long as you enforce your boundaries, there's going to be people that have a lot more respect for you. And I feel like that's why the community that I have has built up the way it has is because I've enforced those boundaries and I've shown that I know myself
mm,
as much as I can, right? We're
yeah,
all evolving as people. We are never the same person 5 years from now who we are in the past. But I feel like once you find those moments, those kind of cornerstones of your personality, that it's important to reinvigorate them from time to time.
When you got started with the actual VTubing in your life, was it easy for you to start because of your background and how you knew how it kind of set in society and how things worked? Was it easy for you to crack the microphone open with your model and start in, or did it take a little while for you to get your bearings?
I think I thought it was both easy and not easy.
Mm,
There are a lot of aspects to streaming that require technological knowledge
mm,
to function properly. And so when it comes to modeling and stuff like that, you kind of have to have the right tools for the job. Or you're gonna have to do it in a very scuffed way. Um, but what's a stream without scuff?
right.
And so when I was first starting out, I didn't have a lot of the things that I have now. So obviously the way that you hear me is a little bit different because I've updated my interface, which is the way that audio gets into the stream.
Right.
And I've updated what they call toggles in VTubing culture. I have a Stream Deck now when I used to use everything from extra keyboards to a programmable keyboard. And then I finally bit the bullet and ended up, I think, getting the Stream Deck into my repertoire. And a lot of that side I think was harder, but a lot of that was because of the cost. It's
Right.
just to have the ease and convenience of things. Sometimes you just got to pay for it,
Yeah.
and there's just no way around it.
Yeah.
Because the programs and stuff
Oh
were
yeah.
just easier to use.
And
Yeah.
that goes with any media because I know there are times when I did broadcasts where um, people would be surprised how much duct tape we used to get all our
Oh gosh,
equipment
yes,
together.
duct tape, magical.
I mean, it's you think, oh, that sounds really good. Well, it's actually two cell phones wired together with cotton balls, and there's a lot of different things you could do to get on the air,
Oh
and
yeah,
and people are using setups, I imagine, that would make an old engineer fall over just by thinking about it. But once you do
oh
get
agreed,
what,
agreed.
but once you do have something that's actually meant for the job, I imagine that takes a lot of that right out. A lot of the stress of when you
Yes.
can just hit one button instead of turn on six keyboards to try to do the same thing.
Exactly, exactly. Yes, back in the day, it would take me like an hour to get set up because of all the little workarounds I'd had. I started out as a very sustainable streamer, so I would look for secondhand. I would always be asking friends for their old devices so they wouldn't become e-trash. I was very focused on the aspect of building my rig out of gently used parts, but then for me the journey stopped at the time. At least for that particular moment, the sustainability aspect changed for me a little bit because it was going to cost about the same to build the dream machine, which is what I call my rig,
Yeah.
for me to build into obsolescence out of used parts than it would be to just get a semi gently used one that then I could upgrade for
Yeah.
the next 10, 15 years.
Oh, yeah.
And so you have to kind of adapt your vision for things sometimes, even if it doesn't fit exactly what you think. Yes. So as far as kind of the idea of sustainability and like flipping it on its head, um, you kind of have to think about it in that way of like how adaptable will it be for the future. But I think that there are still many ways to apply things like using webcams for tracking or using old cell phones as webcams and things of that nature from my creative background, because that's where I got my start streaming, was creative and makers and crafting, I think is what they call it on Twitch.
Right.
But basically, because of my basis in fashion design, which is what I do, we call it dream weaving on the channel.
Oh, nice.
I kind of understand
Yeah.
a little bit about the technology side as far as like the sustainability aspects of it. And then with this rig, I've learned a lot. All I can say is I've learned a lot.
Well, if I mean, you've done, you're talking about knowing the culture of what's happening in that area of the country, and something like cosplaying too. I mean, is there any group that knows how to MacGyver things more than cosplayers? I mean,
oh, fair.
I mean,
Yes.
yeah,
Agreed.
you got to come up with horns. Okay, we're going to use this and this and this and this, and by golly, it worked.
Yes, definitely. Definitely.
Yeah, so there's so much that obviously you've been able to take over and use. I have to ask you this: would you rather that culture come to this side of the ocean and adapt to what's going on here, or the other way around? Would you rather be on that side and have the culture already there for you to be a part of?
I would say it also depends. It also depends because I feel like a lot of American culture kind of sees Japan as this almost this monolith, right? Like there's a lot of folks that go over there and they're like, "Oh my gosh, it's anime. It's this country of anime. I want to go see my waifu." Like they,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it can get into that. But I feel like, especially because of my personal experiences, I've been to Japan a few times in my life. I feel like a lot of it depends. Unfortunately, for me, when it comes to the idea of being out in Japan or in another country and being part of there, I would say I started to do more of this because I have a chronic illness. And so seeing many people represented who have chronic illnesses who are still able to perform at this point was really inspiring for me. And I feel like, unfortunately, in a lot of Japanese culture and Asian culture, they don't have a lot of coverage for that kind of thing. So I don't think as a person, I would be able to function in that particular like environment.
Right.
I wouldn't be able to do my as well performing as I do here in the States.
Right.
I would say I really like the idea that it came from somewhere, but I would probably want to be here. And a big part of that is because I don't think it would have been able to evolve in the way it has unless it came to the States. In a lot of the base culture back in the day, especially dealing with idols or with celebrities and things of that nature, because they were exported as a phenomenon, you had so many more rules and regulations and ways that you could exist and perform in this way, because there was a certain amount of ownership of you by the company, right?
Right.
And a lot of performers now, with the Americanization and the westernization of it, are getting a lot more freedom to speak out about mistreatment or miscommunications or things that they don't agree with, which if you were in the traditional culture for it would be seen as taboo. Like, what are you doing? You're breaking the mold. Like you can't do that. That's against everything we stand for here.
And some of the laws
so I
too.
think the freedoms.
Yeah, the laws over there are
Yes.
much different. when it comes to that.
Yes, they are. They're very much different. They're very much different, especially in production, especially if you're working in a company or what they call corporate VTubers and things of that nature. There's a lot more precedence for privacy NDAs and keeping things under wraps. Whereas now you kind of see, especially with the evolution of a lot leaving their corporate lives to become indie VTubers, folks like Fauna, who's leaving HoloLive recently, the most recent story I can recall, and going back to her previous life as a VTuber called Lemon Leaf, and kind of how the fact that the kind of taboo of going back to your past life and being basically told, oh, you'll be nothing without the corporate side of it, is kind of a lie, a bit of a fib. If the people have enough of the support from the fandom, they can easily go back to being an indie VTuber and be very successful with it.
And happy. They're happier.
Yes. I think happier is a measure. Like, I'm sure that they were happy when they initially got accepted into the corporate side because they thought that they would be able to accomplish a lot more. And they were. They were. Obviously, myself, I'm obviously in the hunt for a management team, but that's for a lot of higher performers where they can you can get sponsorships and they handle contracts and they're able to do a lot more of that stuff. But once you learn that, and if you find that you're able to do that side on your own much more readily, because especially with a lot of the things that are coming out from these corporate situations of no attention to all their talent. They have too many talents. They're not paying enough attention to the 3 or the 4 that feel like they're not getting enough support.
Right.
Or maybe they don't handle them correctly. Right. And so being corporate is a double-edged sword. But being indie also has its downfalls and upsides, because you obviously have to handle everything yourself, especially if you end up incorporating or becoming an LLC or something of that nature. But I know we're getting into business, which isn't the nicer side of things.
No, but it's the thing that people don't know about. And again,
it's definitely.
I got to have you back, because this is there's you got to come back. Okay, there's just no you don't have a choice.
I'm so sorry.
No,
I'm a yapper. Okay, I will say.
Yeah.
I zatsu all the time.
Oh.
It's literally zatsudan is like the terminology for just chatting openly about nothing, but also just chatting about everything, like miscellaneous topics.
Well, so that's a trap I fall into all the time.
Yes,
but it's a very welcome one, and I'm very glad to have met you with this. And again, we hardly talked about the channel, but folks, you got to check out.
No, I'm so sorry.
No, well, that's I wanted to promote your stuff here. We're going to have the links in the description, but BerryMelon, we got to have you back for more, because I think this is very important for folks to learn and talk about, and it certainly bring a refreshing perspective to this that I hope people will take to heart, and realize also that your mileage may vary when it comes to something.
Definitely.
But really, with your background, and I will use the term expertise, because I think it is, that will help out a lot of people. So please come back.
Yeah, definitely. Look forward to more in the future.
Thank you for listening to Eric Loy Interviews. Join us again next time when we talk to another member of the always interesting VTuber community.